What's going on, everyone? I am just a typical, average American here today to react to this video titled How Europe Ruined the American Dream for Me, which is a pretty bold statement. Here in the United States, we really worship this idea of the American dream, which is like the dream of owning your own house, maybe having a family, and having lots and lots of money, just having the perfect life, which is only possible here in the United States, of course. But, as time has gone on, it feels like for more and more Americans, this is just impossible. It doesn't happen. It feels impossible for so many people here. So today, I really want to check out this video by a fellow American named Joe Barr, and he's talking about his experience living in Europe and how it's totally changed his perspective on the American dream. So, let's take a look.
The key to happiness is buying your own spacious house in the suburbs, a 2-car garage, a white picket fence, and perhaps most importantly, cash! Glorious, glorious wads of cash!
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Look at this is a nice house. Hold on.
The key to happiness is buying your own spacious house.
This has to be a dream for anybody in the world, right? That's a nice house. Anyway, but yeah, for every American, it is like you are taught as a kid, when you grow up, you need a house with a nice, it's supposed to have a beautiful white fence. That's very important. This doesn't have it. So, this house is trash. Doesn't even have a white fence. Beautiful house with a fence and a couple kids with a dog and lots of money and a pool. And if you don't have that stuff, you're a failure. You're a loser, which is totally crazy. I mean, I don't know how people in other countries feel about all that. Like, what do you guys view as success, or like the dream life? Because the American dream is very specific and kind of like, well, back in the good old days, like our parents and grandparents, apparently they were able to get a lot of this stuff somehow. But nowadays, it just seems like it's so impossible for a lot of Americans, especially entering into adult life, like getting a job, starting a family. It all feels impossible.
House in the suburbs, a 2-car garage, a white picket fence, and perhaps most importantly, cash! Glorious, glorious wads of cash!
I'm rich! I'm wealthy! Yahoo!
Yeah.
I'm comfortably well off! Woohoo!
Europeans, on the other hand, are miserable, cycling everywhere throughout their bleak existence because they can't afford a car, crammed on top of each other.
Okay. Obviously, he's making a joke here. But it's funny because actually there's a lot of Americans who would think this, like, oh, in Europe, you guys, you walk and you have to use bikes and buses and like, oh, you guys don't know what happiness means. Or yeah, that is a very bad attitude that a lot of Americans really think you have to live in the United States to find true happiness, which with the way things are going in our country, I I do think a lot Americans are starting to realize that's not true, and that the United States is not as great as we were told growing up.
GDP, disposable income, socialism.
Yes. Yes, Europe has socialism. Very scary, very bad. Um, but all joking aside, this is fascinating to me because it's like I've never really thought about what makes people happy, like in European countries, wherever you might live. Um, is your idea of happiness different than ours? Because doesn't everybody want like a big house and lots of money and a fence? Doesn't everybody want that, or is that different?
10 years ago, I moved to Germany with no idea of what to expect. Except, of course, I get to ride on trains on trains on trains on trains on trains. But I
Okay, so he moved. This is an American who moved to Germany. Wow. So a totally different culture, a totally different life. Um, Trains. Yeah, like here in the US, part of the American dream, owning a big, expensive car. Dream for so many people.
But I didn't just learn about what it's like to live in Germany or travel across Europe. I learned a lot about my home country in the process. And 10 years of living in Europe has completely changed what I think about the United States and what makes us happy. And in this video, I'll tell you all about it. But in case you are new here, my name is Joe Bauer. I immigrated to Germany 10 years ago and have been traveling around the world even longer.
This is fascinating because it's like most Americans never get any exposure to other countries. That's probably one of our biggest problems. Like, yeah, we're by Canada and like Mexico, but most Americans never leave the United States, and we don't really see other cultures or other media on the TV or the internet. Or we're really quite isolated. We're really in a bubble. Um, so the fact that he left the US to live in Germany, which is in Europe, that's like a major life experience that most Americans, we don't get anything like that. So we have nothing to compare our American experiences to. But he does have something to compare it to.
Trying to close the gap between the story we're told about a place and the reality on the ground. And in this case, I feel like I've been lied to about the United States my entire life.
Okay. Hold on. Space equals happiness. Yes. um, it's like sometimes, especially celebrities and rich people say, money can't buy happiness. And you just want to be like, what are you talking about? Like, money absolutely can make you happy, you moron. Don't say, money can't fix all your problems, I'm sure, whatever, of course. But money can make life a lot easier. So space equals happiness? Yeah, like having a big home like, yeah, I would think having a big space equals happiness, yeah.
My wife and I moved to Berlin in late 2019 after 3 years of living in Dusseldorf. There were merely whispers at the time of this weird virus coming out of China named after a Mexican beer. The first apartment we looked at was admittedly smaller than we would have liked. It was about 50 square meters or 540 square feet. That's
Wow.
horrifyingly small by typical American standards.
Yeah, 500 square feet? But that's an apartment. I mean, so he's in Germany, right? Do people Don't people own homes? Do people buy houses? Do a lot of families live in apartments? Because, yeah, I'm a little confused. Um, he's saying it's him and his wife in this small apartment. That's not too crazy. It's not ideal, but maybe it's cheap. But it wouldn't be ideal like to have a family, I guess.
where the average home is roughly 2,300 square feet or 214 square meters.
Okay, I'm actually surprised that's the average size of an American house. 2,300 square feet. That's very big. Uh, that makes me think in the US, there's a lot of small houses and a lot of like mansion, super rich, giant houses. The average is okay. Okay, I guess the average American house is pretty big. For us, I guess it's just considered normal.
That's more than twice the size of the average German home. But the neighborhood is incredible. Super walkable, beautiful architecture, green spaces, and easy access to public transit. We decided in the end, who cares if it's a small apartment with no balcony? There's so much to do right outside of the apartment. We're hardly going to be spending any time inside.
That's interesting. That is an interesting part of life, like in Europe, Germany. So if you live in like this apartment, you can just walk places. Walk. There's lots of stuff just where you live, which is interesting.
And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we basically weren't allowed to do anything except run around the block and bake sourdough. Or I suppose in my case, bake challah. I'll fully admit that at the
Okay.
time, we would have loved to have a bigger apartment because we couldn't go to the movie theater, the bars, the restaurants, the cafes, none of it. We were stuck at home, but of course once things opened up, I started to feel a lot less trapped in my apartment. I finally got to experience Berlin in the normal times, and
Look at this. There's like a train. I mean, that does sound very convenient. It's cool. That you can live in these places and not you don't need a car, I guess, right?
times, and it was honestly everything I expected it to be, and more. And now I'm the biggest cheerleader for our neighborhood, and I couldn't imagine giving it up, even if, yes, I wouldn't mind having an extra bedroom. My fear of losing our apartment and our place in the neighborhood far outweighs my desire for a larger apartment, which we could more easily find and more easily afford if we
Huh.
were willing to live further outside of the city or the neighborhood. But in the US, space is king. Over the last 110 years, the average size of an American home has increased by 250%, even as household sizes declined by 44%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. The American population is declining. Our household size is going down. Um, Most Americans would probably choose to have a house over an apartment. No matter, I mean, we do have like cities, and there's Americans who love the city life and all that. But the United States is a very, very, very big place, and most of it, like a lot of the United States, if you're outside of the cities, are these huge areas of land with towns and houses spread out. And that's what a lot of Americans, that's how we live our life, a lot of us. And you got to have a car and you drive places and everything's very spread out.
In other words, the homes are getting bigger to hold fewer people. I was doing some travel in the US and I recently heard this theory that tries to explain why Americans might prefer bigger homes. I forget where I first heard it, so I apologize that I can't properly credit it, but hey, if you're watching this and it was you, leave a comment and take that credit. So here it goes. We all already know about American sprawl. I talked about it in my last video and about how the average American basically has to drive to reach anything. In other words,
Yes, absolutely. That's just a part of life. Um, if you're going to do anything, the first thing you think is, I'm going to get in my car to go somewhere. Car equals freedom. You need a car. Like, you'd be a prisoner if you didn't have a car. But anyway, apparently that's like a very American thing. I always thought it was just like a normal way of life, but I guess not.
the bars, the restaurants, the cafes, the movie theater, none of it is within walking distance. You gotta drive. And as much as we try to tell ourselves, oh, I don't mind driving, I think a lot of us are starting to catch on as to how much it really sucks. If I want to go to dinner in Berlin, I just step outside of my apartment and enjoy a pretty scenic walk to get wherever I'm going.
I mean, I get it. I think it would be a big adjustment for Americans to first of all, we have to be okay with walking. That might sound silly. That might sound crazy, especially for Europeans. But when you grow up in the United States, you get used to driving. Walking is effort. It takes energy and effort, and maybe this is exposing how lazy we are, but this sounds very convenient, and it even sounds nice being able to walk through a city or a scenic area to get to the restaurant using your own 2 feet. But for a lot of Americans, that is work that we might be too lazy to do.
But in suburban America, it's a boring, oftentimes monotonous and ugly drive. And if you're going anywhere
It is typically very ugly. That's true.
interesting, you're probably going to have to deal with traffic and then search for and pay for parking.
That's true. I mean, I guess it's something that just how Europeans don't think about walking, we don't even think about how annoying it is getting gas, especially now, paying for gas, getting in the car, traffic, travel time. It's just something we've kind of accepted as normal, which maybe we shouldn't. I don't know.
The 10 to 20 minutes I'm spending trying to get somewhere is light years more enjoyable than the suburbanite trying to go out and do whatever they're doing. So instead of downsizing and getting a smaller place, you decide to get a bigger house and you just bring the city to you. You might build a large dining room that kind of acts like your restaurant, a sitting room for your cafe, or hey, if you're a cliche from a 90s sitcom, you'll build a man cave complete with a sports bar and movie theater.
That's true for a lot of Americans, like me. Um, you kind of try to make your apartment or your house have everything you need so you don't have to go out. Because, yeah, driving is inconvenience. So, I mean, that's true. I've never really thought about it like that. We try to have everything we need at home to minimize the amount of times you have to go out. Because it can get very monotonous. Like going to the grocery store driving there in your car to get one thing, or it's boring after a while. Um, I'm starting to see what he's saying.
Not to mention, you gotta make sure you got a backyard because you don't have any other green space to walk to. The park is a drive away. This is partially why being stuck at my apartment during COVID was all the more miserable. I was living a suburban American experience in a tiny European apartment with none of the amenities that come with it. Because I don't have enough space in my Berlin apartment to bring the city inside. But I probably could afford that lifestyle for the same amount of money if I decided to up and move to suburban America.
Okay, so he's basically saying in Europe, you guys are living space is not your top priority. Like having a huge apartment or a huge house, that's not so important for you because you can just leave your house, walk outside, and you have access to all this stuff, which is very different from America, where we feel like almost kind of trapped in a weird way. And so we try to have everything at home. Otherwise, you're going to have to get in the car, and it's a big thing, and make time for that, and go get gas. And it's definitely a totally different way of thinking, totally different way of life. I've never really thought about it.
But I know that having that kind of space wouldn't make me inherently happy. And I suspect deep down, it doesn't really make that many Americans happy, what with the growing loneliness epidemic. I suspected all of this early on in my adult life when I moved to Chicago out of college, and even into the actual city of Cleveland afterwards. But living in Berlin has made it crystal clear. Americans aren't buying big houses because space itself makes them happy.
I don't know. If I had this house, this house they keep showing here, I'd be pretty happy. That's a nice house.
They're buying big houses because their cities were designed so spread out, they're desperately trying to bring the lifeblood of the city into their otherwise empty homes.
That's true. That's an interesting observation. And it certainly makes you think about the American dream. Like the American dream is to have a giant big house. and it's totally influenced by the way we've set up our neighborhoods and our infrastructure. It like I didn't realize in other parts of the world, you're not so worried about having a big, expensive house, which is very stressful trying to come up with the money for a down payment, paying the mortgage, the utilities, the maintenance on your home. It's a lot of work. And for a lot of Americans, it's not even possible. It's not even attainable, especially if you look at the house prices in the US have gone up so much in the last couple of years. It's insane. So I didn't realize in Europe you guys can be happy without all that. I did think you need a big house to be happy. I did think that. And in the US, like maybe that's true, I think, because of the way we've set it up, which is unfortunate because it's not something that's easy to change about the design of the United States. Money doesn't always talk. Oh, God. Okay, now you may have convinced me a bit on houses. There's no way you're going to convince me that money doesn't bring happiness. There's no way.
I hear from the occasional American apologist in my comments who tries to defend how the US rolls. The GDP is higher in the poorest US states than in many prosperous European countries, they'll say. Or more recent one bragged that disposable income is much higher in the United States than compared with Europe. Look, I've never been a money guy. I honestly probably should know more about finances. But stocks, bonds, it all bores me to absolute tears, and I don't ever want to measure my life by just how much I benefited the shareholders. That said, yes, it's true, the GDP in most US states is higher than in most European countries. And honestly, I don't care.
I actually do like his attitude of not being so he is not constrained by the American dream. So many Americans are trapped by the American dream. When I really think about it, as kids, we're taught you need a house, you need you need a college degree. You have to pay for college and get a degree, or you're a loser if you don't. You need a family, kids, you need the house and the great job and the big fancy car and you need money and prestige. And if you don't have all that, you're a failure, which is a lot of pressure because maybe there was a time where that was all attainable. I don't know. That still sounds like a lot. But in the US now, that's impossible. That's totally unreasonable. And it makes a lot of Americans who are taught this to feel like crap about themselves, feel like a failure, even though they're not. So it just seems like from what he's saying in Europe, you guys have a much healthier attitude towards what should make you happy and what you need in life to make you happy. I see that much.
What I do know is that I've never woken up in the US one morning, or anywhere else for that matter, and thought to myself, oh boy, sure feel great about the GDP here. Yes, we pay higher taxes in Europe, but those taxes pay for things I can tangibly experience and benefit from.
That would be nice. In the US, I couldn't tell you what our taxes pay for. I don't know. The military? It doesn't pay for our health care. That's for sure.
Rather have fast and reliable public transportation than more disposable income that I'm forced to spend on a car anyways because trains are basically as rare as a mountain lion sighting.
Yeah, our taxes. It doesn't pay for trains or buses or we don't have any of that. Yeah.
Look, as long as I've got enough disposable income to get the new Zelda game once every few years, I'm good. Besides, disposable income only goes so far in the US when you probably have to hang on to that cash in case, God forbid, you get sick one day. Millions of Americans turn to crowdfunding to help cover medical costs for themselves or loved ones. Overall, about 33% of all campaigns on GoFundMe are dedicated to medical bills. And that's on top of the fact that medical debt remains the leading cause of personal bankruptcy in the United States.
that could be a whole separate video. All the problems with healthcare in the United States. How are we supposed to get the big fancy house and the car when we're losing all our money to healthcare payments?
So, like literally anything else in the world, there's give and take. Some people really do love paying the lowest amount of taxes as humanly possible and measure their happiness by the size of their bank account, even if the rest of the world is crumbling all around them.
You know what I just thought? Like, it's funny. Here in the US, we hate taxes. We don't want taxes because our taxes don't pay for anything. What do our taxes give us? I don't know. In Europe, in other countries around the world, your taxes pay for like healthcare, I think for education, for public services, all sorts of things, maternity leave. You guys are probably so much happier to pay your taxes since you know it's gonna do something for you. Isn't that a funny difference? Like, there's a reason we hate taxes, and we should really think about that reason more. There's a reason why. We should think about that more.
But that ain't me, and I suspect it's not a growing number of Americans. Growing up in the US, I thought the key to happiness was a big ass house in the burbs, easy highway access, and lots of money to fill that house with lots of stuff. But now I see that happiness isn't about what you can buy, it's about what surrounds you. And I'd much rather be surrounded by streets with an honest to God pulse than hollowed out cities and carbon copy suburbs with about as much personality as a thumbtack.
Wow. Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that. It's really cool to see this from a fellow American because I can really relate to what he's saying since he's experienced both ways of life. He makes a lot of good points. And I think this message is so relatable now more than ever, since there's so many Americans who are struggling, and we're not even coming close to the classic American dream anymore, and we feel like failures and like it's all impossible and it's not fair, and we need a new definition of American dream. We need a new goals, new way of thinking, a different attitude. Uh, and it sounds like in Europe or for example, in Germany, you guys have a much healthier attitude about what makes you happy and what you need to be happy. Um, and some of that has to do with just the way you've designed your countries. So I don't know what we can do, but understanding all this is definitely the first step. So, for that reason, I mean, this was kind of depressing, but I did enjoy learning about this. Understanding that there's a different way of living. That's important. So, I liked this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment, especially if you're outside the US, hearing your perspective on all this, on what makes you happy compared to what Americans need to be happy. That'd be really cool to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.